another Note to File Live. It is Tuesday, noon Eastern. I missed last week. I don't know why, but here we are. And doing a little bit of something a little more experimental here, a little bit of an open forum, kind of having people jump on and just join in the conversation. So if you're out there and interested, feel free to jump on. I will send a link. I may be able to run a little. Yeah, I don't know if it's. Anyways, if you guys are interested in coming on, do so. I'm going to start dragging people up. Dr. Fox, regular. How's it going?
How's it going, Brad? Thanks for having me on here.
Thanks, man. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up as well Dr. Mandel Portnoy. Did I say that incredibly wrong, or did I know was that close?
Listen, it's an Israeli name, so it's going to be hard no matter what. So
fair enough. Well, guys, thanks for joining on a Tuesday. It's a sort of a last minute. I'll be really honest. I don't have any real, no agenda here, no template. Just kind of curious to talk, what's on people's minds. And if you guys are out there watching, leave a comment. Always want to hear from the audience. So what's up? What's on your guys' mind? You guys got anything pressing that sticking out to you today?
Dr. Mandel Portnoy, It's nice to meet you. Would you be willing to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Brett. Hi, Daniel. My name is Yael. I currently work at a small biotech pharma called Equilibri. We were founded 2.5 years ago. We're developing a drug for treatment-resistant epilepsy. I'm one of the founders and leading all the clinical operations. Background, have PhD in clinical research from Mount Sinai Medical School. I specialize in cardiac physiology and EP. Master's in cardiac physiology and biophysics. Developed a really cool basic science project that I had no interest in continuing. I'm a very impatient person, so basic science is not for everyone. And undergrad emergency medicine, and I was paramedic of the Special Forces for 4 years. So
wow,
a lot of basic clinical research experience lumped into that.
What a story. I have so many wonderful questions that I could ask you. So why did you want to come on to Note to File Live?
I started to follow this forum group of people a couple of months ago, been a quiet observer. I think I have actually a lot to contribute. I'm an Israeli, so I live in New York City now, but Israeli with all that brings. So it's very hard for Americans to digest. Israelis, I want to say, we're very upfront, in your face, telling you what we think. In my opinion, it's a great advantage to have because there's no going around in circles. It's just like straight to the point. What's the issue? Let's fix it. So I've been watching, as I said, quiet observer, and I think I have a lot to contribute from my personal experience, and also how do we make this field better on all aspects of it, right? Because this is a field of dinosaurs, almost feel like.
You're not wrong.
It's like one of those things that I'm like, okay, we need to smash this whole thing and build it from the ground up. Otherwise it's just like we keep just putting band-aids over, and we're not fixing the root cause.
Welcome to the dream team. Yes.
So, as my husband called me, rebel. This is the.
Yep.
So I'm here to help, support, share, and learn, and make this field better for everyone.
A little secret, the very first doctor that I ever worked for, a PhD scientist, really well known in the oncology realm for basic sciences, was Israeli. And everything that you just described was exactly how it was like to work in that lab. And you gain a lot of respect. The one thing that she always talked about was how she hated the news in the US because it never really talked about what was actually happening. That's the one thing that she always said. She's like, if I want news, I have to go call some of my friends because they just don't talk about it here.
And then you get a one-line sum, right? Basically, what's the summary? What's the gist of this? What do you need?
that perspective, what you're saying, let's get it all out. Let's air it out because it stinks, and let's clean it up. I love it. So I wonder, you're on the sponsor side, you're on the sponsor startup side. Oh my gosh, you've got so many pressures on your side, likely with investors and money and all of these other things happening. How do you want to see like the future of clinical research? If you had a wand and you could wave it, what would you like to have happen as a founding sponsor?
So I will say this: I would completely destroy and rebuild it in a way that technology is embedded and an integral part of every aspect of it. I think the accessibility is an extremely important issue, and access to patients and access to sites, which is a problem. I think the way CROs are operating needs to be illegal, to be honest. I mean, sorry, again, being very speaking.
No,
I think it just like it's the fact that their interest is, continuing the study as much as possible, and the sponsor interest is to make the study as short as possible. The interests are not aligned from the get-go. So there's issues with that. I think there are ethical issues with that. I think like it boils down to that, right? I think there's some aspects of delaying, clinical trials from getting to their endpoint as fast as they actually could, which is an issue. So, I mean, multiple levels. So this is why I'm saying we need we need to break a lot of stuff here.
Wow. I saw Dan Safara's back. So welcome, Dan. I know you're going in between patient visits and YouTube influencing. So like you're just straight up all over the place. Dan, we've got a really good conversation here. We've been blessed with a founder of a sponsor group who is Small Bio, going into clinical research trials, talking about kind of like the dysfunction of the clinical research industry right now. So welcome to the story.
I love it. Yeah, we have a small biotech doing a SIV later today for a new PI of ours. No CRO. So you're not alone unless you're from the same company. That'd be crazy.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
So you said you've been a silent viewer in all of these conversations. What do you think, or what do you agree with, and what don't you quite agree with? What's being said in the rebellion right now?
So I was a PI at Sinai. When I was at Sinai, I was a PI on a couple of cardiac valves studies, and going through the hoops as a PI in an academic center, right? A very prestigious academic center that it takes 12 months to start a study at. So you have this, and then moving to the dark side. The fact that finding sites is an issue. Finding good sites is even more of a challenge, right? Getting away from academic centers, I think, is a key, because they are just the timelines that they're looking at. They're just like the most inefficient organizations, and the processes there are just like mind-blowing, right? So, how do we make study startup better for everyone? Why? Because it's going to be better for sponsors, better for payers, better for patients. Like, it's going to be better overall if we can just, start the study, get the study ongoing, finish the study, boom, drug approved, device approved, whatever, we're bringing new technology, new drug to patients, right? So I think, the shift from moving from academic centers, they're just taking their times and don't care, to be honest. Don't care. They don't care. And switching to a more of a very like basically different approach of small sites, physician-owned clinics that will need the support and the infrastructure, because they don't have the infrastructure to do research, right? They need to be trained, they need to be supported, they need to have, people that are being trained, etc. Right? It's like there's a ramp up period there. Mm-hmm. But I think the change in paradigm of switching from the big universities and academic center to the small clinics and physician-owned clinics is a key to actually push this field forward.
And then when you combine the bureaucracy,
so accessibility.
Yeah, you combine the bureaucracy of the academic institutions with the inefficient, incentivized CROs, and you put the two of them together, you have like a giant perfect storm of just nightmare for development.
Not doing anything and not moving the needle, and getting on calls every other week and just telling you, exactly what happened on the last report that you viewed. So and
then sending you the bill.
Exactly. The monthly retainer that I need to sign off, right? I mean, it's mind blowing. Very inefficient.
So, I think it's encouraging to hear sponsors recognizing that. I do think it's happening. Obviously, the three site level people here are all doing that, right? Working out and setting up sites like in their community. I think there's a lot of us out here, not just us three loudmouths. There's a lot of people doing it. I think it's gaining some momentum. But what's it gonna take? Because I worked at academic center. Frankly, it was easier to not do any work. It's better for me not to enroll a patient if I work at an academic center, because no one's gonna yell at me. I'm not gonna get in trouble. If you go to these places, you'll find a lot of coordinators are going out of their way to find ways to disqualify patients instead of actually include them.
Yep.
So I think you have a whole different level of incentive with people working with physicians in their community and really trying to help patients. I'm with you there, but what's it going to take to sort of expand on that and have more sponsors be open to it, especially when a lot of these people are naive or research naive or don't have some impressive CV of publishing or whatever the case may be.
So I want to say that. So we have currently a phase 3 that we're running. I have 84 sites globally. It's a mess, right? It's a big study. We're talking about a lot, like hundreds of patients globally. Wow. Looking for sites was like you need to look under a rock, and that's an issue. You need to find them. And it's a cat in a sack, basically, if that even makes sense, right? You don't even know if those are good sites that will recruit, right? I'm writing them the check of $30,000 startup, fee, and then I don't even know if they will recruit patients. Will they recruit good patients? Will I get good data? You don't know all of that. I find myself to be very untraditional in that sense that I'm a very let's get this going. What's the next milestone? How do we push this forward, right? And being very creative within, the regulatory, basically borders of the sandbox that I can play, but I definitely push it out as much as possible. So I would ask an attending, that is a PI on my study, where are your colleagues located? Can you refer me to your colleagues, someone that that you worked with, you think that is driven, that you think it will be great experience for them? I have a couple of new attending physicians. They are females, all of them. That just got moved and got their new attending position after a fellowship. Okay. And the conversations are with them, which is also mind-blowing and concerning, is that they are they're scared to take on this responsibility, right? Yep. They don't have the experience. They feel that they're very insecure to begin with, participate in clinical research. And then, there's a lot of other society aspects that are integrated into that, right? Like there's imposter syndromes that female physicians suffer from across
Oh
the
my
board.
gosh,
Like
yes.
there's a lot of factors that goes into that, right? And I have calls with every one of my PIs, and I'm like, okay, tell me what prevents you. I want to give you this opportunity. Really, you're research naive. I want to give you this opportunity. You're not going to be the study PI. You're going to be a participant PI. It's important for you. This is why it's important for you. I'm giving you this as an opportunity. What do you need from me? How can I support you? And I feel like once there's an open dialogue and you really hear the concerns, you get PIs that are engaged, that want to do good, that are accountable, right? They feel the responsibility to you as a sponsor. This is why I have those, all of my PIs, all the PIs across the world have my text me, whenever they need. But I keep this very close communication with them exactly because of that, the accountability and the fact that they have a sense of responsibility towards me. And I support them with an experienced CRA, and I promise them that, the CRA that we're matching them through the CRO, which again, very untraditionally, is going through all the CRA CVs and picking who should go where, just because I want to support them with whatever they need. So I want to give, as I said, I've never encountered this problem with male physicians. I can say that it's across the board with female physicians, and it's very unfortunate, but I'm trying to do what I can from my end and give them this opportunity. I hope that was an interesting insight, but
it is. So you said you're in neurology and epilepsy. Are we looking at neurologists, like female neurologists?
Yeah.
I used to direct a lot of a very large physician group, and you're right. There is this huge inappropriate totem pole in the specialists among the medical field. And I'm really glad that you are empowering those women to become the professionals that they can be. At the same time, I wonder, Brad and Dan, how many of your sponsors have such an intimate relationship with their PIs, with your PIs?
The small ones, typically.
Yeah, very few, and almost for better or worse, sometimes it's actually not always good when the PI can sort of jump over even like their own research team and have conversations in isolation. That can be a problem sometimes, which sort of maybe seems counterintuitive, but I do still appreciate that. I mean, the communication goes so far, and it doesn't even have to be an insane amount. I mean, it can be, fairly low level, can make a big difference in engaging with that PI,
What about you, Dan?
Brad, I want to say that I completely understand what you're saying, that the PIs will feel comfortable to just jump above, right, the research team and contact me directly, right? They're picking up the phone. I need this, So I feel like I create a very clear limit as to what I'm going to talk to them about. And, beyond that point, contact the CRA. I'm happy to send the email on your behalf that this needs to be taken care of, or, something like that. But I'm not getting into the nitty gritty work of the CRA unless there's like an issue. But I'm there for the PI to support them. But I'm putting a very clear understanding as to what needs to go through the CRA and, the chain of command, basically, and what can be discussed with me. And I think this is setting this expectation from the get-go is also very helpful.
Yeah. On a legal part too, we found that too. Sometimes PIs have conversations with sponsors and like, yeah, the PI agrees to do something. And then we come back and say, you can't do that. Sorry, it's either not in the contract. We're not really supposed to do that. It's without a scope. It's always good to keep the administration in the conversation with the PI.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That would be my only caveat is like, having, to your point, and it sounds like you addressed that by keeping everyone attuned to what's going on. Because I've had those too, where the PI or someone comes back and says, "Oh, the PI says you guys are doing this." I'm like, "What? what? We're not doing that sub study, or we can't do that because of this, but they didn't know that because there's just different levels of disconnection. But yeah, ultimately, I obviously think generally more communication is good. But again, things can get a little bit funky sometimes, so just got to be wary.
So do you guys think that having those really good conversations and communications with the sponsor, do they result in better trial experiences, enrollments, performance, things like that?
It can. I
I
mean,
do.
it's certainly better than conversation with the CROs. I'll tell you that. When you're a site and you're contacting a medical monitor, I've noticed anecdotally a huge discrepancy between the quality of the response I get when the medical monitor is CRO employee versus sponsor. I mean, the CRO medical monitor, typically they're more concerned about you naming the subject of the email properly so they could figure out where to file the email after they respond. Whereas a sponsor has more skin in the game. They're more interested. You can tell these things, and that's been my experiences for the past 17 years. And it's probably even more evident now with CROs taking on larger and larger workload and kind of having one medical monitor juggle a dozen different studies. I think that's the quality of response that you get is not the same.
Yeah, I mean, I would
I
tend to
agree. I agree with that, and I think sorry about that.
No, you're good. Go for it.
I would agree with that, and I want to say from our experience, we had a small dose finding study just last year in preparation for the large phase 3, and the rate of recruitment by the CRO was ridiculous. And at some point, with funding projections, we realized that, according to that, we won't be able to finish this study. And the funding will dry up completely. So this is where I got really hands-on. And the recruitment rate, we closed the study in 2 months after I started having very serious conversations with the PI, with the coordinators, to support them from the sponsor. And you understand basically the lack of support that the CRO provides them. And it's mind-blowing because you're paying for all those services, right? And they're not getting that support. And if you don't sit right here and help them to identify those patients, there's not going to be any movement. So we have really nice graphs of the recruitment before and then when I started, you see it goes all. So that's I would definitely say that those intimate conversations are very helpful in my opinion.
Good.
Brad, sorry I cut you before.
No, you're fine. I mean, I think it's been like I stated before, it can be a little bit of a double-edged sword with the small sponsors who are very involved because I do think that they tend to be more successful. They tend to be listening with the intent of actually making things better, not just going through the motions. But we've also had that, sometimes it's a little too close. They're a little too close sometimes, and that can be challenging too. As you're trying to sort of manage a bunch of studies with a bunch of different, stuff. They sometimes will take up a little too much. But ultimately, I still think it's been a much better experience working directly with sponsors and especially smaller, more hands-on sponsors. Now, is that, scalable for a sponsor? I don't know. Maybe not. It's a lot of work, right? And, maybe more challenging to pull off. But ultimately, still, I think it's way more successful or has been more successful in my experience.
Now I'm sure we're going to get some comment out there. They're going to say, okay, the boutique CROs out there, the ones that are small, intimate, customized, they're going to say, don't put us in the same pot as the big global giants. We are better. We're going to be the better CROs. We're all going to see those because we see those comments all the time. How do you feel about the boutique CROs?
I had a very poor experience with a boutique CRO. Very poor experience. It was garbage, and it was very tough. And we're basically took on responsibility that we're paying and developed everything in house. Like I'm talking about data management that we needed to develop in house. I'm talking about stats. I'm talking about
Wow.
basically we left TMF filing with them. I mean, and I want to say, I think this needs to be written in the history, okay, books, okay. I maybe 75% into the study, I escalated and renegotiated with this boutique CRO and said, these are all the services that you were, paid for, you were scoped for, paid for, but I ended up doing them. So I want a refund for all of those services. Okay. I kid you not. Okay. And I was able, and it was a long process, but again, give me a bone and I will.
Mhm.
It was a long process, but I was like, hell no, not happening. Like they have not met a crazy Israeli like I am, but not happening. And I was able to get a $350,000 refund cash from the CRO.
Dang. Don't mess with an
And-
Israeli from New York
I
City.
I was
Holy moly.
And, I got to I can't even tell you how, I escalated this to the highest level possible. And I'm like, well, that's what I did. What did you do? To make the study successful. And at the end result, they had to give me a refund. But, as a
Yeah.
small sponsor that, money is tight and, timelines are tight and, so we had a very poor experience with a boutique CRO that was then bought out by a gigantic CRO that was also bought out now, very recently. So that was really bad experience.
So maybe the solution is literally just trying to leverage some way to get the sites and the sponsors to work together.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes. I think collaboration between sites and sponsors is a key because they have skin in the game at the end of the day. And CROs, you can tie them to a tree. After 2 years, they will still get paid, a monthly fee for whether they did their job or did not do the job, So,
Exactly. So whose responsibility is it to make sure study design is realistic? Because all this talk about CRO good, CRO bad, it's not so simple. Often this boils down to study design where sponsors are creating unrealistic protocols in the sake of exploratory endpoints. And it's the CRO's job to tell them, no, we don't advise you go that route. Based on our experience, this is the way you should go. Who's going to be the CRO that wants to do that during a bid defense? It's like a politician that wants to cut spending and increase taxes. You just kick the can down the road. So I think that's part of the problem. And, who knows, maybe site networks replace CROs, but they're going to be just as incentivized to say yes to keep the revenue coming.
So the giant race to the bottom of the RFP, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So what
some of these exploratory endpoints are just killing these enrollment.
Yeah, the while you're at it. We always call it the while you're at it.
While you're at it.
We're going to be throwing this much
till there's no juice left.
Yeah.
Just all of it till it's powder.
So what do you have you ever when you do not RFP like a bid defense or whatever it might be with CROs, do you base it off of a protocol within some kind of a finalized look or a finalized version, or how do you adjust the budget of something when RFP is done and you have to make changes to the protocol? What is the dynamic there as far as money, budget, things like that?
You're talking to me or to Dan?
Sorry, Yal. Yeah, I'm afraid to say your name because I don't want to get yelled at by a New York City Israeli.
I promise I won't.
I'll try. I'm doing my very best.
Publicly shamed, Dr. Fox.
Public shaming. Shame me. I mean, but
Um,
yeah, how does that work for small sponsors, like as far as RFPs
So,
go?
to be honest, I don't think it's the responsibility of the CRO at all. I think it's the responsibility of the sponsor to get, a good, actionable, and something that is you're able to execute at the end of the day protocol, right? I think it boils down to the sponsor's responsibility. Unless you're working in the field that no one else did any study before you, there's some sort of guidelines or something that you can look at other study designs and what people have done, other companies that have done and how they design their study and get ideas and also know what their endpoints are. There are very strict endpoints by the regulatory agencies. And there are the exploratory ones. If the exploratory ones are something that is very hard to and undoable, sure, CROs will say, yes, we'll do it. And then they don't do it at the end of the day, right? But it's an exploratory, so who cares, right? So, I mean, it's not your primary endpoint at the end of the day. I think the responsibility is the sponsor. And I think a more collaborative discussion about studies that have not succeeded and studies that failed to meet the primary endpoint is critical, just like negative results publications that are now, almost like mandated to be out there, right? Because you don't want another company to throw $30 million on a study that they will never be able to prove anything, right? So I think this is a key also to create a better path forward. But in my opinion, that's like, I never contacted the CRO to tell me if this makes sense or not. Like I have, especially in epilepsy, we have, basically board and we have consultants, people who been on all the studies in the past 20 years and will tell you what's feasible and what's not feasible. And I think also this conversations with those very, very experienced PIs about what's doable down to the patient level, right? Like down to the blood work, right? Is this too much blood to take from a patient at one visit, right? This is stuff that we're not thinking about, right? So I think when those discussions, when sponsor comes to PIs and have those network of PIs that they can approach and get their feedback, the CRO is just not relevant.
Makes sense. Well, what I can say is you're talking to 3 people who are connected with a lot of sites. So in the event you're ever looking for a site, my guess is you probably could reach out to any one of us and we could probably try to help out.
SOS, save our site, save our sponsors.
Save our sponsors.
Right.
If we save our site, if we save our sites, we're going to save our sponsors.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see a world without CROs.
Ooh, I did not say that.
See,
Wow.
We thought we were aggressive. We haven't seen anything yet.
Well, Daniel, you said to me if you had a magic wand, right? So
I did.
as we keep talking here, that's what I want. Okay. So ideally, I would like to have a bunch of CRAs that are very well paid, that I train them, that know exactly my weak spots and my pain points and the things that I do not tolerate when I read a monitoring report. It's like, so I need this in-house.
Interesting.
I mean, your margins, the CROs have huge margins, and I think smart site networks and maybe boutique CROs are looking at it and saying, hey, your margins are our opportunity, and it's a race to the bottom. I mean, at what point the sites have become commoditized, CROs basically are as well. So, your margins, my opportunity, it's just a matter of time. I don't want to dunk on the CROs that badly. I mean, they do streamline the process. We're in study startup for a bunch of different trials, and there's a little more lack of organization, at least on the startup front, when it comes to working directly with the sponsor. But maybe that's a forgivable sin in the long run. I mean, so what's that value for keeping everything kind of organized and in place? Because that comes with trade-offs too. It comes with more stiffness when you get communications, which we discussed, medical monitors, CRA. It gets a little less investment when it comes to leadership. I've heard CROs tell sponsors straight up, we're not financing your study. So like, we're going to pay our people first before we pay your sites.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that's the price of structure. And
Interesting.
you
And
can
I
try to
think
reverse engineer it. And that's, sounds like what some in the industry are trying to do.
I think that the startup is one side. I do notice CROs dump a lot of resources. Like once the sites are identified, and they go through the whole giant contract negotiation, CTA, regulatory filing, boom, 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 onboard. And then when it comes to maintenance, the resources, they go into CRAs and we can monitor visits and you make sure the data is going. But I like what Brad's word was, it's an ether to try to manage contracts once they've been awarded to a site. On the administrative financial level, it is just a bear to try to do it properly as a site.
Yeah.
So maybe like pull out the strengths and like what CROs do offer and strengthen in the industry, that what they can do well. And just like what you were saying, if we can create enough of a margin for the sponsors, maybe like you said, you like to customize CRAs so that they make sure that they are fully representing your needs as a sponsor. If you were able to save enough of a margin from the cutting of inefficiencies, maybe CRAs could become in-house, like you said, and they could become specialized, and maybe CRAs wouldn't have to be farmed out.
Yeah, and good luck with that. I mean, there's things that we wish we can have, and there's reality. Like, there's a shortage of CRAs, whether they work for a sponsor no one's ever heard of or a CRO that everyone's heard of. I mean, we're all chasing these same people, and we got to treat these people well, and they're not going to be perfect. These studies are getting more complex, and that means everyone needs retraining at all times because we're always doing something new. I've been doing this stuff 17 years. There's new things we learn all the time. Every protocol brings on a new set of challenges, opportunities, and we haven't even discussed the patient centricity or the site burden yet. The trade-off for structure, for more organization, is more site burden usually. There's more forms to fill out. There's more logs to fill out. Usually with the sponsors, it's more simplified, but that comes at the cost of a little more disorganization.
So I'm working on a hybrid model, basically in the era of hybrid. So as I said, the small study that we had last year. So we had 10 sites, 4 in Israel, 6 in the US. And before we even onboarded a CRO and all of that, I was able to go to Israel. I identified the sites. One of the sites said, this is a great CRA. You should meet her. I met the CRA, phenomenal CRA that is working as a contractor. I hired her to our company, basically as a contractor. And I said, you're my CRA in Israel. Quality of data, amazing, very responsive, very quick turnaround, super efficient, easy process to work with. With the 6 sites that we had in the US that were managed by the CRO, we had 5 times within a year, the entire team was replaced. Okay. And I'm talking about the program manager. I'm talking about 3 CRAs that were replaced 5 times, all of them. It was just a cluster, across the board. And so when we started working on this phase 3 study, I said, I keep her in Israel, our CRA, because at least I know that this is an anchor for me. At least we have a couple of sites that are delivering and they're working well with her, etc. And then when we onboarded this study and the CRO that we picked to manage the study, and they're like, oh no, we can't use your CRA. I'm like, well, I'm the sponsor. I'm paying you. You're going to do what I ask you for. So we're going to use that CRA in Israel because we have existing relationship and she's awesome. No, she's not trained on our SOPs. Yada 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 yada. excuses from here until I can't even tell it. And I'm like, well, you need to learn how to work together. Let me know what you need. That was basically it. And of course, she's working with us and she's doing a phenomenal job. And everything else that needs to be happen in Israel that was supposed to be managed by the CRO is falling between the cracks. And it just like they overpromise and they underdeliver. And it's over and over and over. And, why do I expect a different answer or a different solution with the CROs? It's the same issues over and over and over.
Yeah.
And, we outsource payments this time because managing payments to sites on a large scale, 85 sites, study is a big headache. I can tell you that in the last 2 days, I received 5 calls from sites saying that they didn't get paid yet. That, and this is something that they're scoped for and we're paying the premium for, right? And they just did not do that. Why? No one knows.
Did did CROs ever give a reason?
No, it's in process. Their process has
But it's not just the CROs. I mean, sites do this all the time too. I think it boils down to workload. I really think CROs, sites, whatever the case may be, we keep recycling the same vendors, whether it's a CRO or an investigator. Nobody's working on identifying new sites in real communities with real patients that are diverse, by the way. So whose responsibility is that to do? I mean, individual entrepreneurs like ourselves, but also I think sponsors, when they go out with sales reps, they can be scoping out. They do exploratory endpoints and studies. Let's do exploratory endpoint when you're going to different doctors' offices and bringing them sandwiches. Why not ask them if they'd consider doing research or have the MSL go with them? So I think this boils down to workload. Site CROs, they're all overworked. They're all understaffed. It's not necessarily lying, but it's not giving your all because you're not able to give your all to one specific project, as much as sponsors hate to hear that.
So we've got Brad, you end at noon, right? Or in 15 minutes?
I'm good to keep
in
going,
theory.
man. We've got 70
we've got
comments out here.
Yeah,
We
are you
haven't addressed it all.
They're
So.
saying CVS is the answer too. CVS
There's some really,
is the
there's
answer.
some
Are
really
you watching these
interesting-
comments? So
there's
I
some
really want to
interesting,
focus.
really
Yeah.
interesting comments in the comment section.
I want to focus on Patty. Patty has said a lot of really good things. She's got taking an interesting stance. A lot of it is like no hate, anti-hate. The hate isn't helping. And I think, I really dislike the hate. There's so much improvement we can do all over the place. I agree completely. And that's a very interesting comment where how do we instill change by not living in hate forever, but also by bringing up our concerns in a way that everyone can pay attention to? I think that hate is an extreme level of outcry saying we need to change things, but it's also it's an endorphin. It gives a high. Everyone's paying attention to me. I have this feeling of aggression when I use hate, and I do agree to a level, Patty. It's good not to live in a world of hate. It's not to live permanently in hate, but we do have to try to figure out a way to voice our concerns in a constructive way where, although it does feel negative at times, we need to move beyond that and try to move toward a resolution.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I would even characterize a lot of what I see as hate necessarily. It's okay to be dissatisfied and to address that in a very straightforward fashion. I mean, I don't know that, even if we're to say, like, I don't like working with a lot of CROs, okay, I don't hate them. They're not, the worst thing in the world, but it's okay. Again, it's okay to criticize and talk about that. And that doesn't automatically mean you're full of hatred.
Yeah. Hate. Well, they say hate is a strong word, but it can get negative in a toxic level where sometimes if we don't focus on a single problem and take it all the way to fruition, it can feel like we're constantly being negative at times because there's so much to change.
I'm sorry, did I say that I hate CROs?
No.
I don't think anybody said
okay.
You strongly disapprove of their actions.
I just think it's a very inefficient, right? And I have allergy to inefficiency in general. So
Oh,
and
I love it.
So this inefficient organizations, they bring a lot of frustration. So I apologize if I said hate. I don't remember I said hate, but
No,
I
no.
mean, again, I'm extremely frustrated from working with a bunch of CROs, and it's because they are inefficient and our interests are not aligned. So,
And that's perfectly reasonable reason, a perfectly good reason for
Okay.
for
Sorry,
talking
just
about it. I think, you know, I mean,
The margins.
it's okay. It's okay to look and say like, hey, maybe sometimes some of this shit's not working, right? So is it necessary, or you know, is it, or do we just have to revamp what exists? I mean, those are, I think, nothing should really be off the table in terms of trying to improve what we're doing. And even that means, you know, rethinking the way some of
There-
these models work.
I
That's
agree.
okay.
I
Their
agree.
margins are someone else's opportunity. Like I've said, I mean, one thing that CROs are good at is being consistent. I get a steady flow of studies from CROs. We have to figure out how to work with them. The free market's going to decide if this business model is good or not, as you've seen with CVS and with Care Access and other hypothetical ideas that failed. CROs are still here, and they're still sucking up more margins. So the opportunity is wide open. Maybe it's a site network sponsor hybrid. Maybe it's decentralized sponsor investors. Like the tech transfer offices we haven't even discussed. The
Oh, gosh.
incestuous relationship between startups and these AMCs, right? So how do we innovate there? How do we innovate at the earlier stages? And I think the CROs, they're going to adapt. I mean, these are not incompetent people.
No.
They just don't have
yeah.
to. They don't have to do it until someone makes them.
You don't force the change, right? So I mean, and it's working, so why fix it? Basically, this is what it feels like when working with the CROs. But there's so much that is actually broken. So much, and it affects people's life, and it sucks a lot of money that really shouldn't. It shouldn't be that expensive. It shouldn't be, you know, I mean, yes, we will pay, so I guess there's a market for it, but you know, you're actually paying a premium and you expect a certain level of activities to be done and results to be delivered, you know, stuff like that. So when you're paying something and you don't get that, that's like, that's a waste. And in the era that we're living in with the shift in technology, you know, I think like as a whole, right, you know, every CRO that's developing their own proprietary database, like, you know, no, no, I don't need your proprietary database just because it looks nice as a marketing, you know, slogan on the bid event. No, I don't need that, because you know what? When I need to transfer a study or rescue a study from you, that's a headache for me, right? How do I transfer that database from your proprietary? You know, it's like, so I mean, there need to be, you know, certain standards, almost like stuff that are standardized across the board, systems that are being utilized by everyone the same way. So it's not, and then the real competition will begin. Then you will see exactly who the good CROs, and they will actually float, right?
If
Because
there are any, I mean, I think it's not the CRO. I think it's the business model itself that's flawed. It's
Yeah,
not the organizations.
I think what's going to happen is it's so entrenched into the history of the industry that you're going to end up with almost like a sect spinoff of people who are going to come together for efficiency and against this inefficiency to create almost like a clinical research 2.0, where only the efficient and the ones who are dedicated to doing the right thing are going to be kind of included in that little group. And then the other ones will eventually just age out. I don't think it's going to be like a switch that you flip, and I don't think it's going to be a system where you change what is so ingrained as wrong. You literally have to reboot it as a different ecosystem.
so take your magic wand.
Measure my magic wand. Here we go.
Take your magic
And
wand.
And of course, CROs who perform efficient work for the right reasons they're going to be included in that part of the ecosystem because they do create positivities. I mean, there's a reason why they formed what they did. I think that maybe over time, though, their motivations have changed where they didn't quite adapt to the advances we had in technology and efficiency.
I think Magic Wand is getting more community clinicians to do research.
Yes.
Yes.
Complete healthcare integration. That's my big thing. And I do think that that's going to be a future that we can grow if we foster it.
Yeah, I mean, CRO or not, like if a sponsor has enough sites across the country that are experts in whatever therapeutic indication, and those sites are connected with technology and leveraging it in the right ways, like Creo, Versatile, Viva, Inato. Shout out to all the sponsors. I mean, that's
I wasn't going to plug anything, Dan, but you went there. Jeez.
We got to do it. I mean, isn't that what tech is? It's a deflationary force. Like, so it forces you to adapt, and it allows small companies to act bigger than they are.
Yeah. The giant reassessment, the giant adjustment to tech. I saw in the comments someone said an analogy to Netflix versus Blockbuster. A lot of the whole the community society is evolving with technology as we go. Where some companies they might have been needed in the 1980s are no longer needed. I'm sure you could pick your CDs versus iPods, whatever it might be, where a solution that it just didn't age well. It's just not needed anymore, and so it starts to go away. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Anything else in the comments you guys want to point out? I feel like they've been extra spicy.
Man.
Comments are spicy.
Shout out to Bo. Shout out to Christian. Shout out to Patty.
Man,
Michael.
Brad, your live streams gets the spicy.
Man. All we need now is like a Jello rink because it's just like getting kind of crazy out here. So, but Yael, I'd love to have a conversation offline. I have a lot of ideas for you if you're interested.
I am interested, and I'd like to brainstorm with you as well. I do want to say that I think what needs to happen as we're all talking about pushing this, in a more collaborative and site-driven approach. So physicians have a lot of egos. I'm sure you've noticed.
No
way.
Of course not.
Only in New York.
Well, listen, between Columbia, Cornell, Mount Sinai, and NYU.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I know. For sure. They're not the easiest people to deal with.
No, not the easiest people, but across the board, physicians, there's a lot of ego involved. And I think a little competition never hurt anyone. And that's actually something that really attracts physicians because they are by nature a competitive breed. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And then the second thing is that I would like to see referral program, basically, that sites, at the end of the day, they went to med school and then they went do their residency and fellowship, and they have a class, right? Maybe 40 people, 8 people in their fellowship for whatever, right? They are very well connected and they know exactly who are the people who are their colleagues at sites, other sites that are not doing this. And I think a referral system in that, right, in the community at the site level, not academic center, right? We're not talking about them. At the site level, in the community, I think would be extremely important into expanding this as a network. And even if sites are very research naive, there's smart people with a little bit of money and some education. You can bring them to the point that they can start do research and get into that. So I think this is something that we as a society, as people who wants to change clinical research and drive this forward in a different way, in creative ways, need to think about basically how do you expand that network among the community and PIs. So.
No, I love that. I think Dan has to jump. Dan, anything you want to plug before you hop off?
CRO, we're using. Well, can't talk. I wish I could talk about what I'm about to jump on, but no. I mean, there's no good or bad. I think the incentives. Like, show me where the incentives are, and I'll show you. Like these are smart people running these CROs sites. I think we just need more diversity. We need more community-based clinics doing studies, and I feel like the sites that get successful, just like the CROs, just like the sponsors, by the way, they tend to kick the ladder out so that the smaller guys can't climb it. So, it's going to be grassroots approach, and I think that's really the solution, is getting more community-based clinics. The question is, who's going to do it? And I don't know. I mean, maybe the people watching are going to do something about it.
I love it. Consider it a challenge. Listeners, you do it.
Challenge.
Yeah, you do it. You think it's so easy? Go do it.
Good.
All right, very good. Well, I mean, if you guys, again, if you want to stick around and address more
these
comments.
questions.
Strong word. That's a strong word. Attack.
I was going to say that I didn't mean it.
No, I mean,
to physically attack.
Lee's
Literally.
Lee's ready. Lee,
Lee's
get on
on.
here, man. I got to jump off, guys, but thank you so much, Doctor. It was really nice to meet you. I'm going to connect with
Nice
you on
to
LinkedIn.
chat.
Catch you later.
Thanks, Dan.
I'll see you later, man. But yeah, these questions, boy, the community, what a heated argument. There's so many disconnections between sites, sponsors, and CROs, and now we have sites and sponsors on here. We just need a CRO. I would love to have a live event with a site, a sponsor, and a CRO. Brad, do you think you can make that happen?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it'd be cool to rotate, some different guests, and someone from each representing each one. And there's even more in the ecosystem you could drag in. I mean, I don't want it to be. And look, I try to do this even purposefully, but like turn a mirror on sites, because look, sites are not some excellent all the time, perfect, don't have any problems. We suck too, frankly. A lot of sites do.
They do.
And you can even, I mean, look, the differences can be night and day between project and project for our site. Some studies, we come out, we kick ass. And then some studies we struggle and we drop the ball, and, those things happen. It's really so unique from study to study, from site to site, depending on the configuration with the sponsor, the CRO, all the different things. So, it's not that sites aren't also responsible for issues that exist in the ecosystem, but I feel like in many ways, and maybe I'm wrong, but we're sort of we're sort of the most helpless in some ways. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it. I just didn't want to throw that out there, because I do see conversation about like, well, yeah, but it's not just CROs. These guys suck too. And these guys, yeah, we all do. We all do to different degrees, right? That's why we're having these conversations.
If you look at some of my LinkedIn content or videos a year ago versus now, they're very, very different. And it's because after it was like a giant warpath on the sponsors, a giant warpath on the CROs, all of a sudden, when I started catching attention, they contacted me and they said, there's a reason why we do what we do. We have been burned like crazy by sites. And some of the stories that they told me, some of the things that sites have done are just as illegal as the activities performed by CROs right now, if not worse, because sometimes it had patients involved. So, I mean, you remember that ecosystem we did. That's why, and Brad, if it's okay, I'll do a 3-second plug. That's why I created Pact, where sites and sponsors rate each other within CRPN so that there is a full level of accountability. Sponsors come in and they say, okay, here's the Pact score of these sites. We can trust that the sites in CRPN are sites that we can work with that have a good reputation. Sites can work with sponsors and say, these guys have great Pact scores. I trust a really good negotiation with them because they're really good performing sponsors. And if in the event sites have bad Pact scores reported by the sponsors in the network, they're dismissed from the network. they're not allowed to have access to the sponsors that trust CRPN. And if sponsors have really bad pack scores and they cheat the sites within the network, their premiums just went up a lot. So if they want to access a network of quality and they don't want to contribute to the quality, they either pay more or they get out. That's how it is. So full level accountability on both sides to kind of keep everyone from behaving the right way. And I think back to the ecosystem idea, I finally concluded you can't change this industry. You can't fix what is so long gone, but you can kind of create your own little bubble of people who feel the same way. And then you can just create a new level of quality. And if it grows, which it will, then it'll grow into the new standard eventually, as long as you can try to keep the negativity out of it, that bad stuff that you're trying to prevent, that you're trying to fight against. As long as you can keep that out of it, you will grow and you'll overtake the industry as the new standard.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that's true. I mean, so, like certainly that's a lot of the reason why we're doing the things we're doing, because we think it's the way to go. We think it's the future, and we think it's the right way to do things. And hell, Dan's been doing it for 10 years longer than either of us.
2006, man.
Yeah, I would say we're kind of new to the game in that regard, but again, I think it's changing. I think it's a slow change. I think it's just awesome to have these conversations with sponsors, because
thank goodness,
so often it's sort of like a fence between us and sponsor. I feel like
it shouldn't be. I feel like
I agree.
And I think this open discussion are critical and are very important key to a success of a study at the end of the day.
So
I agree, and people like you and Robert Goldman, who is I think on the sponsor side, who I know comes on with Sphera pretty often. I mean, I'm just encouraged by seeing this level of just candor and just talking things through, right? I mean, I legitimately believe that will go a long ways, longer than maybe what we even think it will. It's just talking it through, because let's be honest, man, this stuff's complicated. There's so many moving parts, and none of us are going to figure it out on our own.
So Yael, I know Robert's coming. Would you have any interest in coming to Save Our Sites in Tucson and really have some conversation with some sites?
When we can chat offline, but
we'll chat offline. It's we'll talk about.
Commit to it. We want you to commit to it right now online.
Okay, so February 2nd, 2024, Tucson, Arizona. Brad, Dan, and I, and the Latinos in Clinical Research Group have formed our own conference for sites. Likely one of the largest organizations of sites, those community sites they're key, the largest organization of them coming together in a very, very long time.
Yeah, sure, I'll come.
So
there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
This is
as long as
all recorded.
And the kids are off school, so
yeah. As long as the kids, they can bring them to Tucson. I think my daughter wants to come, so we'll have.
Okay, we can definitely chat about that then.
That sounds good to me.
Sure.
Have that conversation. Yeah, if we really need our sponsors to come to the table. I mean, we've it's so funny. You have a conference of sites coming together saying things are wrong. We need to save our sites, right? And some of the initial reactions were, "Well, you're too negative. We don't want to come to your conference." It's like, well. There's a reason why we're negative, and maybe if you came, we could talk about solutions.
So going back to me being Israeli, this is something that we don't appreciate, right? Because that means that there's an issue and we need to fix it. So just saying, we don't like this approach or we don't like this attitude. Yeah. I mean, okay, I can say it in an American way that can go easily down your throat, but it's going to be the same way, exactly the same thing that I want to say at the end. So pick.
Yep. And I'm loving these comments. Brad, do you have any comments that you want to address?
I mean, like 1,000, a lot of them, honestly. And so sort of following the conversation from the beginning with, I think, again, without getting maybe insanely in the weeds here, I go back to the beginning here, because I think what kind of sparked the conversation initially Oh man, that's a lot of scrolling. This is a lot of comments. I'm proud of you guys for hanging in there.
I think it's
I
a
think
very
this-
interesting discussion, actually, and comments from the audience. I want to say,
Yeah.
I feel like this has been very, very fruitful.
So this is, I think, what kind of spun off a bunch of the conversation here with, why isn't there more being done to change the 80-85% trials are delayed or never complete due to retention and recruiting? Which, I mean, everyone's trying to address that, right? I think it's a little silly to think why isn't more being done. I mean, I feel like a lot is being done now. Is it the right thing being done? That's maybe another question, and maybe a more important question. DCT, presumably the whole idea behind decentralizing trials is that we can get to more people so that more people can participate, and so that we do hit those timelines and don't have to delay or otherwise stop trials because of recruitment and retention. I tend to think the problem is earlier in the process, and that the protocols exclude the very people that they're meant to address in the first place. Often, and maybe there's reasons for that I don't understand, but I don't know. I mean, Are we not? I mean, I feel like everything we're doing is trying to fix that problem, right?
Yeah, I think the term there is delayed. How do you define delayed? What do you do with delayed? Is delayed between or from enrollment of site to data collection? Is delayed the contract process? Is it the recruitment process? Is it the protocol process? There's a lot. I mean, it's a multivariate and complex problem with many, many different things to consider. For me, the specialization is money, obviously. If sites don't have the money they need to do the work, then they're going to be delayed. They may be unable, not that they need to be incentivized, but they just don't have the fuel they need to do the job. That could delay something. If they have hundreds of thousands of dollars shouldered in debt that they're owed beyond contractual terms, then they're just going to stop enrollment. And so then you've got an enrollment delay. There's financial, there's regulatory, there's miscommunication. There's all of these different reasons for the delay. Now, the 80 to 85% would be very interesting to break down, because I wonder if you were to break that down to identify like what percentage of that pie goes to each section for the reasons of delays, whether it's financial, regulatory, whatnot, and then you could target the largest reason for that delay and really drill in. But Michael, I guess the answer to your question is it's complicated and it depends.
I want to say to that, and I just want to say back to Daniel, what you said before. I disagree with you that this industry, will not change. I think it will change eventually. All industries will have to adapt, just like happens, in other industries that everyone said, no, it cannot be adopted. It cannot, things will not change. I think it's another field. It's another, basically, it has to change. The way it works right now, it's just so inefficient. And I think those delays, wherever they may come, it suggests inefficiencies in the processes, right, along the way, from contracting and budget. I'm sorry, from site selection to contracting and budgets, and how long that takes, and then patient selection and data collection and data cleaning, like all of that is just so inefficient. Every step of the study as conducted right now is done in an inefficient way. And when there's inefficiency, there's so much room to fix and to grow and to learn and make it better. So I think with that delta that is just, in every step of this process, I think the industry must change eventually.
Oh yeah, I think it'll be through attrition. It'll be like change through attrition, just gradual, slow, gradual. As older generations start to retire, newer generations start to accept things, it'll happen, but it's going to take time.
Agree. But I think, the movement here and having the those forces, right? Pushing into that direction and being vocal and being loud about the issues, right? And not just hiding and say, hey, it works, but it just took 6 months extra.
I don't want to go to your conference because you make me feel uncomfortable.
Exactly. Like, that's the reason. That's the goal. That's the goal. So we can all be uncomfortable together and then find a solution that works. So I think this movement is a critical piece into that. And I think people should not be afraid of talking about the things that are very uncomfortable in this industry, right? This is, this is a key to changing the paradigm.
Yep, I could not agree more. I think it's
I'm still reading these comments, man.
I know. They'll be there. I mean, I'm going to reach out and get some of these people to try to come on and have some more of these conversations more on here, because I think there's a lot to address. It's very dense, and it can be very challenging to address these things in LinkedIn, especially in comments or even in a one-way conversation. So I'm hoping I can get a couple of folks to come on and have a conversation maybe over the next couple of weeks, do more of these live streams. Dr. Mandel Portnoy, you're welcome back anytime. I appreciate your insight. I thought it was really awesome.
I'm happy to join whenever you need some different perspective, radical perspective.
Welcome to the radicals.
I mean, look, if nothing
else,
I think we've been pretty radically transparent, for better or worse. Sometimes that bites us in the ass, but ultimately I think it's better to pull the Band-Aid off.
I'm in good company. You see, this is why I was a quiet observer. I assessed that I can actually be the full Israeli that I am.
There you go.
You're welcome. Bring it. You're always welcome. Always welcome. I appreciate your voice.
Yeah, thanks guys. These will be this is posted up on YouTube for later, and it'll live on LinkedIn. Again, this is probably the most comments I've gotten on one of these. I think we're well over 100 comments, so hopefully it'll keep sparking some more conversation. You guys, either one of you plug anything before we sign off?
CRPN, free to sites, sponsors affordable. Sorry.
All right, guys.
About it.
Cool. All right, guys, we're signing out.